microphones, please. Thank you very much. The program will start momentarily.
Please.
Oyez, oyez! Silence is commanded for the justices of the Supreme Court of Kentucky while they're sitting. All those having pleas to make or causes to prosecute, draw nigh, and ye shall be heard. This court is now in session. God save the Commonwealth, and God save this honorable court.
Before we sit down, I would ask Judge Thompson to do the invocation.
Yes. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Dear Father, dear God, dear Lord, thank you so much for this occasion. Thank you for the blessings you have bestowed upon me. Thank you for the blessings you have bestowed upon everyone here. Now that I've given you my thanks, Lord, I'm going to do what I usually do, ask you for some help. I have been rewarded by you by placing me on the Supreme Court. And I have some requests. Please help me with these people. Help me play nice with these people. These are my fellow justices. We're all in the same sandbox, and I need some help. Help me have the temperament to be courteous and to use civility and to have patience and to listen to them and to compromise, so that our joint common sense can render opinions that no one of us could do on our own. Help us, Lord, and thank you so much. Amen.
We next have a presentation of colors by the Greenwood High School Naval Corps.
Dress right, dress. Ready, front. Carry. Colors. Ready, gut. Left, face. Forward, march. Left, 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 right. Color guard. Hold. Right. Face. Present. Colors.
We will now have the national anthem by Terry Cornell.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs burst
right, face, forward, march, left, 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 right, color guard, hold, right, face, order, colors, fall out.
They did an excellent job. We will now have our colleague, Justice Nickel, will sing My Old Kentucky Home.
The sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. 'Tis summer, the people are gay. The corn tops ripe and the meadows in the bloom, while the birds make music all the day. The young folks roll on the little cabin floor, all merry, all happy and bright. By hard times come a-knocking at the door, then my old Kentucky home, good night. Weep no more, my lady, oh, weep no more today. We will sing one song for my old Kentucky home, for my old Kentucky home far away. Yes, we'll sing one song for my old Kentucky home, for my old Kentucky home far away.
Be seated. Well, what a great day it is as we welcome our colleague, Justice Kelly Thompson, to the bench. I would first call on Judge Jeff Taylor to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Chief Justice Van Meter and Justices of the Supreme Court. I want to say play ball, but I think I'll say may it please the court. I'm going to have to scratch off one of my comments. I was going to say that Kelly wasn't one about pomp and circumstance, but this was a very nice opening, Kelly, so I'm going to scratch that out. It is my privilege to give some brief opening remarks today for the court's newest Justice, Kelly Thompson, Jr. As you know, Justice Thompson is no stranger to the courts, having served on the Court of Appeals since January of 2007 for the past 16 years. And four of the current justices that I'm before today have served with Kelly on the Court of Appeals. And obviously you know him as well as I do. I'm kind of wondering why I was here, but you know, since 2007, when Kelly got on the court, we started doing the Kentucky law updates together. In our district, we have 2 updates. So we presented at both Owensboro and Bowling Green. So I think we did it 26 times, if I'm counting correctly. We lost a couple years in COVID. But the lawyers kind of refer to us as Laurel and Hardy. And as you would expect, I'm the setup guy, and he's the main show. And so, Kelly, after today, you're on your own. This is it. So, you know, in preparing these remarks, I considered how best to describe him. You know, after we had such eloquent descriptions, you know, of Justice Bissig yesterday. And, you know, there's not one word to describe Kelly Thompson, and I won't even try that today. I reflect back to the first court meeting that Kelly was in, Kentucky Court of Appeals court meeting in January of 2007. when Chief Judge Combs was presiding, and Justice Keller, you were there, and Chief Justice, you were there, and I'm sure you remember this. After that first day of our meeting, we had, 11 new judges that day. And she looked over at Kelly and she just said, "You're going to be an interesting judge." And he was and has been, and he will be an interesting justice on this court. I did a little background just as you probably, some stuff you may not know, but Kelly graduated from College High School in Bowling Green in 1965. And, when I was kind of growing up, College High, I thought that was maybe one of these schools for bad boys or, troubled children. But actually, College High was for, and they had a similar situation at Murray. The University of Western Kentucky University had its own high school, and it was for children of staff and faculty. And I got to researching that a little bit. In 2009, and I believe your alumni magazine is called the Spirit Magazine, is that right? It's the University Alumni Magazine. Kelly gave an interview, and he was talking about his days in high school. And what I'm going to tell you is not going to be a surprise to anyone in this room. This was a quote that he gave that day. "I was not always the best behaved student at College High, but the experience certainly had a profound effect on my life." And he went on in the interview and said the first College High genius was Danny Boggs. And y'all may know Danny Boggs went on to the federal courts. He said, "I might have been the second, but I didn't apply myself." And he has applied himself since that time in 1965, and you've come a long way to get here today. And of course, there was another graduate from College High named John Minton a few years later. And then after he graduated, the place was shut down. So I just assuming they ran out of geniuses, okay? And that's the truth. I'm not exaggerating. So anyway, Justice Thompson also went on to graduate from Western Kentucky University in 1969, where his father had served as president for 15 years. And actually, his father was employed by WKU in some way for almost 60 years, if I'm getting that correct, Kelly. And he's a university legend. And Kelly, I know your dad is looking down today and looking at you and smiling with great pride, although he may be questioning why you asked a Murray State graduate to give the remarks today. Judge Thompson went on to graduate from the UK School of Law in 1972 and began practicing law that year. And yes, before you get your calculators out, he's been a member of the Kentucky Bar now for almost 51 years. And will hold the distinction today for being the first Kentucky justice to be sworn in who does not pay bar dues. He's exempt. That's quite an accomplishment. And he's probably, and Laura, you'll have to confirm this for me, but I think he's been a member of the Kentucky Bar longer than over half of our sitting judges have been alive today. That gives you a little bit of his background. Now, in light of that, Justice Thompson's going to bring three things to this court that I think is going to benefit you greatly. One is his persistence, that four of you I know up here are well versed with, and his experience and his perspective on the rule of law. And as you know, he does not mince a lot of words. You always know where he stands on legal issues. He cuts to the chase when he's debating and arguing legal issues. And he likes to argue. And I'd say that in a good sense because he argues the rule of law and questions of law. And in fact, he kind of reminds me like my old German Shepherd when I get in the backyard and he gets mad at me, he gets a hold of my cuff of my pants and he won't let go and I have to drag him all the way across the yard. And that's kind of the way Kelly is when he gets into an argument with you on the Supreme Court. I'm just warning you ahead of time. But that has fed him well because, he has made a lot of good points and a lot of opinions that he's written, and he's probably written more dissents in the last 16 years than anyone on our court. And oftentimes the Supreme Court would come along and reverse our court in light of some of those dissents. And he's also written more than 1,000 opinions since he's been sitting on our court. And that's a substantial number. So he comes in very well versed in the law and with a great experience. I've been arguing with him for 16 years on various legal issues and laws. And he does it respectfully, yet stubbornly. And that's just the way it is. And he's not going to change. He gets to argue and debate now with you, the justice of this court, and he's looking forward to that, since our Court of Appeals panels have never conferenced enough over the years to his satisfaction. He's already pointed that out to me, how much he's going to enjoy your conferences. And so I suspect court week is not going to be the same. It's going to be a lot more lively than it's been in recent years. You know, in May of 1983, I began practicing law in Owensboro. And earlier that year, John Miller had been appointed to the judgeship on the Court of Appeals, which is the judgeship that I currently hold, Division 1 of District 2. And John was running for a full term on the court later that year when I started practicing. And I met him at several functions and got to talking with him. And one of the functions I asked Judge Miller, because I didn't really know a lot of folks at that time, I said, "Who's running against you?" And he said, "Oh, some young whippersnapper from Bowling Green named Kelly Thompson," and which is true. And John Miller won that race, but Kelly was not deterred. 20 years later, in 2003, he ran again for the seat on the Court of Appeals when Judge Joe Huddleston, retired. And he lost again in that race to another Bowling Green judge, Judge Minton, in a very close race. Again, not deterred, 3 years later, when Judge Minton ascended to become Justice Minton on the Supreme Court, Kelly ran for the third time, this time winning by almost 20,000 votes, giving evidence to his persistence over 23 years had paid off, and of course, now the rest is history. As far as his experience, that speaks for itself. He's been, again, a member of the bar for almost 51 years. His jobs have included a law clerk at the Court of Appeals. He was a litigator for the Transportation Cabinet at one time. He maintained an active litigation practice in Bowling Green for over 30 years. And in light of just when I practiced in Bowling Green, I never had any cases against him, but I always knew he was around because when I drove down the Parkway to Bowling Green, he was always on the radio doing live interviews. He was the first guy to do live radio interviews as his ad. And remember that, talking about all the courts and everything. He'd been in and out of every courtroom every day, and he was on the radio, and I thought, what is this guy doing? So anyway, and of course, he's been a judge on the Court of Appeals for 16 years. And this experience has clearly prepared him for his newest challenge on the Supreme Court, and I believe that experience will be an asset for this court. And finally, his perspective on the law, that will be of substantial relevance, I believe, to his service on this court. Now, I've always believed that one's perspective of the law is an essential element that shapes your service as a judge. That perspective is developed by your upbringing, your education, your experience, your understanding of the law, and your understanding of the importance of the rule of law in a constitutional democracy. In my opinion, he checks all the boxes on these. He has a good understanding of all of these factors that shapes one's thinking regarding the interpretation and application of the law. Now, that perspective is probably more keen after what he's gone through in the last year. As you know, he ran a year-long election, and I think it's served him probably more to understand his perspective of the law and the rule of law, given what he experienced in having to deal with the injection of dark money into our nonpartisan judicial elections, which some other justices have had to deal with also. He has experienced firsthand and fully understands the importance of an independent judiciary that seeks first and foremost to treat all litigants fairly and impartially. And in my dealings with Kelly and all the panels we've sat on, that was always his utmost importance. And he's committed to uphold the rule of law without being influenced by partisanship or outside influences. That's why I think he'll be a good addition to this court. He has the perspective and the experience and the bulldog persistence to be a good justice. Now, I know yesterday we got into ties. Everybody was talking about ties. You had Frenchy tie, you had your legal tie. Today I wore my Scales of Justice tie in honor of your investiture, but Kelly doesn't like ties sometimes, especially under robes. And probably some of our biggest arguments or debates or discussions, however you want to call it, were about his tie situation. Now, I know Chief Justice Beaver has a stricter policy about ties than I do. I know that. You saw firsthand that. And I'm a little concerned. So as a parting gift from the Court of Appeals, since you won't have me around anymore, I've got you this patriotic tie. in your desk so that when you get here without your tie, you don't get, well, addressed by the Chief Justice, okay? It's been a pleasure and my privilege to speak today, Kelly. Thank you for asking me, and I wish you much success. Oh, no.
We will take that tie and put it in his locker back here. Next, we have a statement from Judge Sarah Combs, which will be read by Chief Judge Larry Thompson from the Court of Appeals.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice Van Meter, and all the remaining justices here on the bench. I want to start off by telling you it is truly a humbling experience after 28 years of a judge to appear in front of you today. I long, and I mean this with the utmost sincerity, I long with every other judge in the state of Kentucky look at you as the North Star for guidance every day when we take the bench, and I mean that genuinely. I understand, I hope I understand, the significance of the impact of the decisions that you must make each and every day on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth. And I can tell you, I greatly appreciate those remarks. The decisions, I know, are awfully carefully researched, reviewed, and rendered, even if at time to time they may be a reversal for a judge on a court of appeals. I always know when I read those, they were done with they were well-reasoned, thoughtful, and I'm also smart enough to know the pecking order. And but I do. I want to tell you it is an honor to be here today. It's also my personal pleasure to appear before a court composed of individuals that I have been blessed to serve with on many levels, whether it was district judge, circuit judge, or court of appeals, that now sit on this bench. And I can tell you that I have the utmost respect for each and every one of you, and I want to share that on behalf of not only the Court of Appeals, but the other judges in the state of Kentucky. I've been asked today to provide comments from my colleague on the Court of Appeals, Judge Sarah Combs. Judge Combs wanted to be here with you today, and she wanted to deliver these messages on behalf of Justice Thompson on her own, but she had committed beforehand to take a friend to the hospital for medical treatment, and I applaud her for that. She, as all of you know, is probably one of the most eloquent speakers that I've had the pleasure to know in my career. And to ask me to get up here and read her comments is like turning it over to a bull in a china shop. But I am greatly honored that she asked me, and I'm greatly honored that Justice Thompson asked me. But it was on the provision of this. When I came up here today, most of you that know me, and I know this Thompson, Justice Thompson knows me, knows that I take my work in my court very serious, but I don't take myself real serious. So I think Kelly knew he had a little bit of a loose gun coming up here today, and it made him just a bit nervous. But I will tell you, Judge Taylor and myself talked a little bit earlier this week. We've had the pleasure to see Chief Justice Van Meter's investiture, Justice Bissick, and it's been a wonderful week. But we both wondered amongst ourselves, why do you get to make the comments and kind of take a few shots at your colleague and the rest of us don't? So we figured we're going to share with you our opinions today on Judge Thompson. And I've got to be honest, 99% of those are very favorable. The first thing I want to say today as I look to Justice Thompson, did you share that prayer when you took the seat at the Court of Appeals about working well with us? I don't recall that. But no, he knew when I come up here, and he knows I mean that with the utmost respect. I now want to read the words from Judge Combs and to share those with the courts today. And I want to make sure I get to those and quote them exactly as she has stated them. It's a rare and immense honor to offer comments before this highest court in our Commonwealth. Today is an especially grand occasion as you welcome a new member to your bench, Judge, now Justice Kelly Thompson. I thank him for the invitation to participate in this major event of his lifetime. First, I want to express my sincere thanks for Justice Thompson for his years of service on the Kentucky Court of Appeals for the last 16 years. He has labored hard to render just and considered opinions dealing with varied subject matters and a considerable workload of cases. At all times, he has been collegial with his panel members and considerate of the serious concerns of the hundreds of litigants upon whose cases he ruled. While dedicated to precedent, as we must be, Judge Thompson often offered pragmatic insight into new methods of administering or handling of cases. Many of his suggestions are now well-established policies of the Court of Appeals. As he moves on to the Supreme Court, I reflect upon his most outstanding traits as a jurist. First among them is a profound and innate sense of justice, coupled with a common sense appreciation of the impact of appellate rulings upon the lives of the litigants that come before us. He is keenly aware that law should serve the needs of the people rather than rendering people subservient to a system that may have become out of touch with constantly evolving social mores. He works diligently to keep the law relevant and fair while operating within the limits imposed by statute and stare decisis. That can surely be a delicate balance. Next, I note his energy. He never tires of the pursuit of his particular insight into a problem, and he never really gives up on a point in which he believes. I will say amen to that. In ergo, his separate concurrences and dissents have often been prolific and well-reasoned. And last of all, I note his enthusiasm and collegiality. He genuinely enjoys people. He is energized with the repartee and debate that form a critical part of our analysis of cases. As Judge Thompson becomes Justice Thompson, he will now serve on a forum in which he can turn into reality his many aspirations for making justice more relevant than ever for the people of Kentucky. On the Court of Appeals, I've often ended my opinions with the observation that I'm following the current law as I must, but I profoundly wish that the Supreme Court would revisit certain precedents. Judge Thompson has shared that sentiment on many occasions. Now he will be enabled to express more than precatory observations and instead to be part of the critical role of this court, molding precedent for times to come. My sincere congratulations, Justice Kelly Thompson. That's behalf of Sarah Combs. Now, the downside of the presentation today, I now get into my remarks, and I appreciate so much, and I echo Judge Combs' comments, Justice Thompson. When he called and asked me to share Judge Combs' comments, as I indicated, he said I could say a few words. And I agree wholeheartedly, as I said, of everything she said. But if you would bear with me, and I know these can sometimes be a little long, but I want to share a couple personal observations. I know as this week has went on, the personal observations is what I've enjoyed about hearing about the judges. And I want to share a couple. When I first came to the Court of Appeals, one of the first things I did as a new appellate judge, I immediately added each one's cell phone to my phone and my contacts list. About a week after that, I had the pleasure of making my first oral argument, and I'd been away from home for probably about 3 to 4 days, so I was contacting my wife. I sent my wife a text telling her how much I loved her and that I really missed her that week. The problem with that is my wife's name is Kelly Thompson. Shortly after sending the text, I get this thoughtful phone call telling me that he thinks the world of me too, and he looks forward to seeing me. And he proceeds to follow up and tell me that you have to be one of the friendliest new judges we've had on the court. So for that, I got an early introduction to his sense of humor, and I greatly appreciated it. and I quickly changed his listing in my contacts to Judge Thompson. But it's always been a pleasure in the 4 years I've served with him to hear him laugh, and it's such a genuine laugh, and it's an honor to be here on your behalf today. The second story I'd like to share deals with the case I was as the presiding judge on, and Justice Thompson at the time was an associate judge on the case. I get this phone call, and as a new judge, I'm honored to get a phone call from one of my respected peers, and he goes, "Larry, I got to tell you," he said, that was a wonderful opinion you just rendered. It was a wonderful application of the facts to the law, and I just wanted to congratulate you. I really like it." So, I hang the phone up. I get a little puffed up, proud of myself that I've impressed one of my senior judges. 2 days later, I get a 30-page dissent in the mail. I called him and I said, "Kelly," Justice Thompson, I said, "Kelly," I said, "I don't get it. You said it was well-reasoned and I applied the law to the facts." And he goes, "I've always had a little trouble with that one." I had to laugh, but I will say, and I think Judge Taylor echoed up there, and Judge Combs, if this gentleman ever dissented, I know he had a well-founded reason. I may not have always agreed, but he always agreed we had the right to disagree with each other, and I know that he will do the same with you. But he has been known for those 30-page dissents, but they were always appreciated. I have to be honest with you. The last story I'd like to share with you, I guess it would have been maybe October, November. We were on panel, I think Judge Taylor, Judge Thompson, and I, and we were in Bowling Green. And we were having oral arguments at Western Kentucky University, and we all know that Justice Thompson has a wonderful affinity for that university, and rightfully so. But we had a break, and at the break, there was a group of us, we were all talking, and I noticed over at the window, Justice Thompson standing, looking out, and he's got this big smile on his face, and he motions for me. I walk over to the window, and as we're looking out, we're looking down a hill at a beautiful residence that sits on campus. And he looked at me and said, "Larry, you can make it to the second floor, and I don't wear hard-toe shoes, but if you climb up the side of that house, you can slide in that corner window." Later, I found out that was his residence when his father was president of the university. I don't know how he became aware that you could slide in the side door upstairs, but I really enjoyed that. Justice Thompson, I'd like to close with a quote that I think you will appreciate. And I'm going to paraphrase it. It was a little bit lengthier, but I want to paraphrase the quote. "I pledge to you today that you will never have any reason to regret your decision to elect me, and I will never reflect or bring discredit on this institution. I will never be satisfied with anything but the best for this institution." You may well remember this, but that was a quote your father gave upon being notified in 1955 that he had been selected by the Regents as president of that university. I started off my speech today by saying this is the North Star for the judges in the state of Kentucky. Knowing you and knowing you personally, I know your father was the North Star in your life, and I want to join with Judge Taylor and say, I know your father is looking down, and I know your father has to be so pleased with you today. Justice Thompson, it is my honor to be here today for you, and on behalf of your former colleagues on the Court of Appeals, and please remember in the future that you can well, I was going to say if you reverse, which may happen, you can be kind to us in the reversal. On behalf of those on the Court of Appeals, we want to wish you the very best in your new position. I want to close my comments today to this court and to Justice Thompson with a quote that I have read every day for 28 years, and it's from Leviticus 19:15. "You shall do no injustice in court. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great, but in righteousness shall you judge your neighbor." Congratulations, Justice Thompson.
Next, I would call on Chief Justice Minton Emeritus, if he would care to make a few remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. May it please the court. Mr. Chief Justice, fellow justices, former justices. I'll make one more reference to Dr. Thompson as we make our remarks. In early 1957, Dr. E. Kelly Thompson, the president of Western Kentucky State College, as it was then known, sent a letter to John D. Minton, the principal of the Trigg County High School in Cadiz, inviting Minton to stop by the Western table at the KEA upcoming convention in Louisville to discuss potential employment opportunities for Minton at Western. Well, the two men did meet, as Dr. Thompson proposed, and their ensuing conversations culminated in Minton's taking a position in Western's history department the following academic year. Now, more than 65 years later, I, the son of Dr. John D. Minton, have the great privilege to play at least a ceremonial role in the employment opportunity now to introduce the son of Dr. E. Kelly Thompson. But of course, Judge Kelly Thompson, Kelly David Thompson, as has been previously pointed out, needs no introduction in any courtroom in this Commonwealth. Because since 2007, he has served the people of the Commonwealth and the people of the Second Appellate District of Kentucky as the judge on the Court of Appeals. And in addition to his years of service as a judge on our Intermediate Appellate Court, Justice Thompson's background as a trial lawyer is truly remarkable. A proud graduate of College High School, both of us, right? Western Kentucky University and the University of Kentucky College of Law, Justice Thompson began his law practice in 1972 as a trial lawyer for the Kentucky Department of Transportation in Elizabethtown. And he then clerked for the amiable Judge Walter Katina, who was a commissioner of the old Court of Appeals and under the watchful eye of Chief Justice John Stanley Palmore, who is indisputably the most influential Kentucky jurist of the 20th century. Justice Thompson was literally in the room where it happened at the watershed period in Kentucky's history, 1973-74, when plans for the judicial article were formulated in these very rooms and foundations laid for Kentucky's modern court system. Justice Thompson returned to Bowling Green, his hometown, in 1974, where he opened his solo practice. After an early foray into statewide politics, actually in 1975, as one of 5 candidates for nomination to the transitioning office of Clerk of the Court of Appeals, Justice Thompson then settled into what became a highly visible, very active solo practice in both state and federal courts in Warren and the surrounding counties throughout southern Kentucky for more than 30 years before taking the bench. Not wanting to miss an opportunity, Chief Justice, to descend into a bit of historical trivia, the successful candidate for the Clerk of the Court of Appeals in 1975 was, of course, Martha Lane Collins, who defeated Joseph E. Lambert, a lawyer from Mount Vernon. For nearly 20 of his 30 years of law practice, from 1976 to 1999, Justice Thompson served as the Chief Public Defender in all divisions of the 8th Judicial District and Circuit Courts. In terms of trial court experience, which includes appearing as a lawyer in over 500 civil and criminal jury trials in circuit court, there is no judge serving anywhere in the Commonwealth today who approaches the trial record of Judge Thompson. When honored in 2015 by the Bowling Green Warren County Bar Association for his 40 successful years at the bar, Justice Thompson credited the influence of his maternal uncle, the late Robert Pierce, for his interest in entering the law profession. And as for his longevity in the law practice, Justice Thompson credited good health and perhaps added, maybe as a bit of humor, plain old obstinance. That's come up already today, Kelly. I suspect, though, that after 14 years of writing opinions, always in search of at least one vote for support, Justice Thompson's self-described obstinance may have tempered a bit. The body of his work, though, in the appellate court proves that he's a highly capable of serving well and fully participating as a member of this collegial body. A voracious reader of fiction of all types, Justice Thompson brings a strong intellect shaped by 30 years of jury trial experience in Kentucky's courtrooms, tempered by 14 years as a judge on the appellate court. Those of us from Bowling Green have been accustomed to referring to our region of the Commonwealth as South Central Kentucky. But when I joined this court and we were identifying ourselves as to where we were from, I remember hearing the Chief Justice, who was from Rockcastle County, referring to himself and others in Somerset as being from South Central Kentucky. So I thought about the best geographical descriptor for the region of the state from which Justice Thompson and I hail. It's not the West, and it's not the East. It's not Northern Kentucky. It's not the Bluegrass. Indeed, the Second Supreme Court District is really Kentucky's middle ground. As our friends in Hardin County, though, which is in the middle of the Second Supreme Court District, are apt to claim, it is Kentucky's heartland. So, Mr. Chief Justice and Associate Justice, it's my honor to present to the court for seating on this bench Justice Kelly D. Thompson, elected by the people of Kentucky's heartland, to be formally sworn and seated as a member of this honorable court.
Justice Thompson, you ready?
Got your stack of Bibles?
No, I don't have a stack.
Raise your right hand. I, Kelly Thompson, do solemnly swear
I, Kelly Thompson, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky,
and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky,
so long as I continue a citizen thereof,
so long as I continue to be a citizen thereof,
that I will faithfully execute,
that I will faithfully execute
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability
the office of Justice of the Kentucky Supreme Court according to law,
the office of the Kentucky Justice of the Kentucky Supreme Court according to law.
and I do further solemnly swear,
And I do further solemnly swear,
since the adoption of the present Constitution,
since the adoption of the present Constitution,
I, being a citizen of this state,
I, being a citizen of this state,
have not fought a duel with deadly weapons
have not fought a duel with deadly weapons
within this state nor out of it,
within this state or out of it,
nor have I sent or accepted a challenge
nor have I accepted or sent a challenge
to fight a duel with deadly weapons,
to fight a duel with deadly weapons,
nor have I acted as a second
nor have I acted as a second
in carrying a challenge,
in carrying a challenge,
nor aided or assisted any person thus offending,
or thus any person thus offending,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. We now call on Justice Thompson to come take his seat on the bench for our traditional hazing of our new colleague. We will start with our most senior member, Justice Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice, fellow justices, and prior judicial colleagues. It's my honor to be the first to deliver some remarks. I also want to welcome Lieutenant Governor Coleman. I know Governor Beshear already had to leave, and General Cameron, you're here with us again, and we appreciate that. Chief Judge Thompson, Judge Taylor, all the judges of the Court of Appeals. I see some circuit judges, all of our colleagues in the judiciary, all the other elected officials, friends, family, welcome. This is our third investiture of the week, and we've worked hard to make it a personal day for our new justices, and also a day that reflects the importance of the roles that they are taking, but also how we feel about each other on this bench. As I think it was my friend and former colleague, Judge Taylor, said, Judge Thompson and I began our judicial career together. We actually walked in the door the first day together. And I remember that as though it was yesterday, although it was over 16 years ago. It's also been said that he's an independent thinker, persistent, and that he's come to be known to myself and my fellow justices as writing very important and persuasive dissents. And sometimes our dissents are our most important writings, because a well-placed dissent, an important dissent, can pave the road for a very impactful and important majority opinion, even if it's years down the road. Another Kentucky jurist, John Marshall Harlan, who sat on the United States Supreme Court, is best known for his dissents, and particularly his dissent in the case of Plessy v. Ferguson, that laid the groundwork for the most important civil rights work that the United States Supreme Court ever undertook, at least at that time. And so I want to tell you, Judge Thompson, that this court and my prior colleagues on this court have been paying attention to your dissents for some time. And my staff, some of which are in the room, know that I'll sometimes ask, well, how did the Court of Appeals opinions come down? And, well, there's a dissent. Well, who wrote it? Well, it was Kelly Thompson. Let me see it right now. And I've been known to say that. I've always thought that even if I didn't agree with your dissent, it made me think about the case in a different way. And I often did agree. And we often took the case and echoed at least a good part of your analysis. So that's how important it is to be an independent thinker on this court. I don't want to be too serious today. We've been lighthearted sometimes, but there's so many stories I could tell, but I had to sanitize them for prime time, and so I've been up all night thinking about how to do that. So we've heard a few things about Justice Thompson's persistence. I think Judge Taylor described him as his favorite German shepherd that won't let go of his pant cuff when he wants him to pay attention to him. I remember one particular time that Judge Thompson and I were not seeing eye to eye on the Court of Appeals. For me personally, if y'all don't know me well, my scholarly work is important to me. But on a personal level, I like to be thought of as at least empathetic and compassionate. I try to live that. However, that day when I could not agree with Judge Thompson's reasoning, I remember that he bestowed a nickname on me, and that nickname was Hard-Hearted Hannah. Now, I'm up there in years, so I've had quite a few nicknames bestowed on me. Some I've liked, some I haven't, some have stuck. But Hard-Hearted Hannah has stuck with me for many, many years to remind me that in my core, I try to be an empathetic and compassionate person and see things from both sides. So, Justice Thompson, it's my privilege on behalf of this court to be the first to welcome you. And it's also my privilege as Justice Hard-Hearted Hannah to welcome you to this bench today. God bless you and your family, and I hope that your tenure is long on this court. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Next, Deputy Chief Justice Lambert.
Thank you, Chief. I would again echo the welcome to all the familiar dignitaries that are here again today in support of our court and the Commonwealth's court. We have enjoyed this week immensely, and I personally have enjoyed getting to visit with each of you, and we very much respect the time that you have taken to be here with us in honor of the three justices that have been honored and elevated, if you will, this week. I note that Dr. Jim Keller is not in the room when Justice Keller has announced that nickname. Perhaps he's not even heard of that nickname, or
Oh, he's heard of it, Justice.
we'll have to tease him about that. But in any event, we are thrilled to have Justice Thompson here today, sitting with us. I was one of the 4 justices that Judge Taylor mentioned, who has had the privilege of sitting on the Court of Appeals with Justice Thompson. And that surely was a treat. And he shares a lot of the philosophy, a lot of the practical lawyering, if you will, a lot of the practical justice thoughts that I have over the years. And I think it was yesterday we had a little bit of celebratory yes when a reference was made to the overturning that we had done last year, perhaps of a particularly naughty and aggravating case that the court had done. And I think that he will be here to improve some of the more sticky traps that are out there in the law for lawyers that need to be cleaned up, and lawyers and litigants, and make justice a little bit more fair and equal for folks along the way. That's, I believe, his way of thinking, if I understand it. And he's a fair and equitable man and jurist, and I think he will serve all of the Commonwealth very honorably and very well. His dissents, we have talked a lot about his dissents. Justice Keller has referred to those, and all of us have been moved by his dissents whenever the staff attorneys are considering whether they recommend to the court that we take a case on discretionary review. We have the Court of Appeals opinions and the briefs, and we look for those dissents that the Court of Appeals writes. And so those who are here from the Court of Appeals, somebody's got to take on the hard work of writing those dissents that Justice Thompson is not going to be there to write. Is that right, Justice Thompson? Somebody's going to have to write those dissents. It takes a lot of extra work to write the dissents, especially those 30-page ones that he sometimes is known to write. But we appreciate those. We appreciate the effort to get that other point of view out there for us to take a look at, and not just a I dissent notation. So he was able to take on that extra bit of work. And Justice Conley and I have, and sometimes Justice Keller, have been known to write a lot of dissents on this court, and we're going to appreciate having a little bit of help here, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I will share a quote from Chief Justice Earl Warren that I think would describe Justice Thompson's character a bit. And this is a quote from him. "Every man in the court must choose for himself which course he should take. Conformity to the wishes of the powerful would be the easiest by far. To habitually ride the crest of the waves through the constantly recurring storms that arise in free government, always agreeing with the dominant interest, would be a serene way of life. It is comforting to be liked, and would be pleasant to bask in the sunrise of perpetual public favor. As tempting as that might be, I could not go that way. Of necessity, I chose the latter course because that is the only means by which I could find satisfaction in my work. So many times in life, the only permanent satisfaction one can find comes from bucking an adverse tide or swimming upstream to reach a goal. The fulfillment of that goal, according to my lights, rested in the discharge of my constitutional oath of office to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and the judicial oath to administer justice without respect to persons and do equal to the poor and to the rich. Justice Thompson, now your dissents might just have to get the attention of the other Supreme Court. Congratulations.
Justice Nickel?
Thank you, sir. Justice Kelly Thompson. Has a nice sound to it, doesn't it, Kelly? You and I have enjoyed a long and respectful friendship stretching back to when we arrived together as new appellate judges at the Kentucky Court of Appeals in January of 2007. In serving together 13 years on that intermediate appellate court, we collegially and respectfully wrestled in resolving many difficult legal issues while struggling to keep pace with an unrelenting current of hotly contested civil, criminal, and administrative appeals, all the while enjoying the blessed assurance that our papers would be graded by a 7-member higher court. As we are now reunited as fellow justices on that very Supreme Court, we will continue our mutual quest to achieve righteous decisions while facing the continued onslaught of endless controversies. But now our papers will be graded only by the people of the Commonwealth, and particularly those residing in our respective appellate districts, together with Almighty God Himself. I am reminded of an old saying often shared with me by one of my predecessors, retired Justice Bill Cunningham, who observed, "The Supreme Court is the final arbiter of our Constitution and laws, not because its justices are always right. No, its justices are always right, only because they are always final." And for that reason, Justice Thompson, we Supreme Court justices, new and retreads, must always tirelessly approach our heavy legal task with what President Lincoln, the native son of Western Kentucky, referred to as an ever-increasing devotion. My friend, throughout your tenure as a judge on the Court of Appeals, you expertly applied the proven analytical approach previously utilized by your father, the late Dr. Kelly Thompson Sr., during his illustrious tenure as president of Western Kentucky University. Now, my good friend and former colleague at the Court of Appeals, Judge Taylor, has already shared some words that your father spoke at the beginning of his tenure as president of that great institution. But in 1969, in announcing his retirement, your highly esteemed and legendary father explained, "All major decisions which I have made as president have been based upon a formula in which all possible evidence is analyzed in the light of all possible perspectives of a problem." The same analytical formula which carried your father to the highest heights of the educational profession has now lifted you to the highest court within our Commonwealth. And I concur with Judge Taylor, because I am certain at this very moment your dear father is leaning out the windows of heaven with a broad smile on his face and exclaiming, "Well done, my son, well done." Even before you and I came together to adjudicate as appellate judges, we served the needs of others as lions. That is, as members of the world's largest humanitarian service organization, the International Association of Lions Clubs. It strikes me today that a good justice should, as the occasion demands, exhibit many of the characteristics of a lion living in the wild, which include being compassionate and protective, courageous and brave, cunning and vigilant, combative and resolute, and collaborative yet independent. Now, I would dissent from my good friend Judge Taylor in saying that I believe your essence can be summarized in but one word. Yesterday, during the investiture of Justice Bissig, her lifelong friend, Judge Ann Haney, captured her essence with one word: integrity, which Judge Haney defined as being one who tells the truth, keeps her word, and places others above self. Certainly, among your many impressive personal attributes, the very same word could also be offered to describe you, Justice Thompson. However, no one should be surprised if I selected a different word to encapsulate your quintessence. That word, my friend, is wit. You see, the Oxford Dictionary explains one graced with wit as a person possessing great mental sharpness and inventiveness and a keen intelligence. But wait, there's more. That trusted lexicon also indicates one blessed with wit has a natural aptitude for using words and ideas in a quick and inventive way to create humor and to dispel strife, stress, and suffering. In my estimation, Justice Thompson, you personify the very highest and best meanings of the term. And I doubt anyone would object, disagree, or, God forbid, dissent to my respectful reference to you as a compassionate and caring wit. The preamble of our fourth Constitution, adopted in 1891, states, "We, the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, grateful to Almighty God for the civil, political, and religious liberties we enjoy, and invoking the continuance of these blessings, do ordain and establish this Constitution." Then, as now, it is entirely appropriate that we pause to likewise express our gratitude to Almighty God for His rich blessings and to invoke His continued presence to ordain, establish, empower, encourage, and preserve us in our common quest for liberty and justice under the rule of law. I, sir, was deeply moved, and my heart was warmed by your decision to take upon yourself the heavy yoke of opening these proceedings with an invocation. It is obvious to me that you know from whence your help comes, and I would encourage you to continue to cast your cares upon Him, because He cares for you and He cares for us. I will close in paraphrasing President Lincoln's second inaugural address delivered in 1865. "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work which has been laid before us. Because," as another native son of Western Kentucky, Vice President Alben Barkley, once said, paraphrasing, "we would rather be servants in the house of the Lord than to sit in the seats of the mighty." Justice Thompson, welcome. Congratulations and Godspeed. I pledge to you, my friend, continued friendship and continued respect as we finish this race together.
Justice Conley?
I appreciate Justice Thompson's prayer, but I want to say it kind of scared me. But I hope it gets answered. Being from the opposite side of the state and never having been on the Court of Appeals, I don't have the knowledge of Justice Thompson that my colleagues do. But in asking people about Kelly, I would get these answers. Smart, very intelligent. So Kelly, the pressure is on. And I'd like to help you, but nobody's ever described me like that. I don't know what to tell you. I've always had to prove the opposite. All kidding aside, however, I know you're smart because I've read a lot of your opinions on the Court of Appeals. And while I agree with some and not others, they're all well written and thoroughly considered. And I've enjoyed the little time that I've been around you this week because I sense you are a real person. You're real and you say what you have to say without worry, and that makes you attractive to me, and that makes you attractive to a lot of people. I think you embrace the old saying that we should be who we are and say what we feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. I think you're going to be a great member of this court. I look forward to working with you and getting to know you better, because I sense that we share a sense of humor similar. So, congratulations, and I look forward to being with you here next month.
Justice Bissett?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to join my colleagues in welcoming and thanking our former members of the Supreme Court, our Court of Appeals justices, and the other dignitaries that came to be with us for this final swearing in of the week. Justice Kelly Thompson, you and I will always share a special bond because we will have come on the court at the same time. When we tell grandchildren in our future, we will say that we started together. Whatever our legacies on this court end up being, we will be tied together in having started. And I have a couple of observations. I join my colleague Justice Conley in that I come from the trial court side of the judiciary and many years, so I've known you as a justice of the Court of Appeals. I've seen your opinions, but I haven't had a lot of contact. But a couple of things have struck me in the time that I've known you. One is how highly you think of your staff and the individuals who work with you, and how highly they think of you. I have watched them taking care of you and saying kind things even when you're not in the room, and I have seen you do the same. And I think that that is such a mark of good character. And so I want to thank them and thank Kelly Stevens and Laurie Dudgeon. I don't know if Katie Shepard is in here, but I know on your behalf, because you support the people that support you, that that is important, and I appreciate that about you. The other thing, we're all now using words to describe. I would say that Justice Kelly Thompson is one of a curious countenance. He has a curious countenance. And that's saying a lot, because by the time you are here on this Supreme Court bench, most of the time you've had a fairly lengthy legal career. And sometimes when you've had a long career and you've had a long life and you've watched a lot of water pass under the bridge, you can become rigid. You can become set in your ways. And in the short time I've been with Justice Thompson, he has mastered social media. He has mastered computer use. We sat together at the Governor's State of the Commonwealth. It was our first official act together as justices. And he was tickled by some of the parts of the State of the Commonwealth, just seeing the various individuals come in. He got his phone out like my sons might and took pictures of different things as they were happening. And I noticed his joy in participating in that and in being a member of the court, and his continued curiosity about what was going on around him. And I think remaining curious helps us to keep an open mind. And so I laud that. He won his election with 63% of the vote in his region, and we were on the ballot together, so when we would see each other, we would commiserate. And I actually first met or spent some time with Justice Kelly Thompson at a Kentucky Justice Association event. I see we have some folks here, Paul Cossey and Hans Poppy and Marissa, who are involved. They hold conferences and they do some judicial training. And Justice Thompson and I had some breakfast together, some coffee together, and it was fun to get to know him. He always has a joke at the ready, and he is one that I agree with you, Justice Nickel, certainly has a wit. We heard from Judge Jeff Taylor about his tenacity, and I'm often known for wearing bell-bottom pants with large cuffs, so I will be ready. But my thought, we're sharing quotes, my thought and quote for today is actually one from Proverbs, Justice Thompson, that you posted. And I saw it because I follow you. And I love it because it exemplifies the characteristics that I've heard all of you talk about. And it's a quote from Proverbs 24:16. And it says, "Falling down doesn't make you a failure. Falling down doesn't make you a failure, but staying down does." So when we hear about him running to be a judge several times, when we hear about his dissents, we know that he's not a man who doesn't know the pain of falling down. But we also know, per Proverbs, that he is the kind of man that does not stay down. So I look forward to a career with you, look forward to being your colleague, and welcome.
I had a family member who lived to be in his 90s, and he was Dr. Charlie Hagyard, and he was always asked, what do you attribute your longevity to? And he had 3 rules, and I'll give you the 3rd rule that I think applies to Justice Thompson. He never wasted any energy resisting temptation. So I am very glad to welcome Justice Thompson to our court, and also welcome Governor Coleman and also General Cameron. Thank you all so very much for coming to all our events this week. Justice Thompson comes to our court, as mentioned, following 16 years on the Court of Appeals, where I served with him for 10 years during my time on that court. And beyond his experience as an appellate judge, Justice Thompson comes to us with an extensive background in all aspects of a litigation-based legal practice, both trial and appellate. And impressively, as mentioned by Chief Justice Minton, one of his first legal jobs was as a law clerk in the early 1970s to our predecessor court, the Court of Appeals, when he was hired by one of the giants of Kentucky's judiciary, Chief Justice John Palmore. In fact, as we've talked about technology and how we are going to share the cases that we share among ourselves pre-rendition, and with the ever-changing technology, one of the things we asked Justice Thompson about this week was, well, how did they do it before they had technology? You know, and he told us, you know, these sheets of paper, white out, you know, that's how it went. So anyway, Justice Thompson has been certified as a civil trial specialist by the, my notes are messed up. Well, anyway, he's been certified as a certified trial specialist by the National
Board of Trial Advocacy of
Thank
American
you.
Bar Association.
Thank you. So anyway, over the last 6 years that I've been on this court, we've had the opportunity to review Justice Thompson's work, and I've always been impressed by his thorough and thoughtful analysis of a wide variety of cases, as he's learned not only in a judicial capacity, but also from his years as a trial lawyer. And I've just thought, as we talked about, everybody who writes a dissent on this court, pretty soon those dissents will all be majority opinions because they can't dissent from each other.
Exactly.
So one of the virtues of our appellate court system is our election by districts, and we have judges and justices from our largest urban areas to our smallest communities. And so where this comes from is in 1847, Judge James Simpson was appointed to Kentucky's then Court of Appeals, which was our highest court. It had 3 members. He was appointed by Governor William Owsley, and the reason Governor Owsley appointed Judge Simpson was because Governor Owsley wanted to appoint his son-in-law, William Goodloe, to the same circuit court seat. So to do that, he moved Judge Simpson up. And at that point, there were 3 judges on the Kentucky Court of Appeals. They were from Fayette, Madison, and Clark County, which are 3 counties, obviously, as you know anything about the geography of Kentucky, 3 adjacent counties in central Kentucky. So at that point, as considered in the newspapers of the time, the 3 justices on Kentucky's Court of Appeals were from northern Kentucky, which was north of the Green River, and the people from southern Kentucky, South Central, the heartland, took offense because there were no judges from that area. So in the 1850 Constitutional Convention, they decided that how we were going to do it is we were going to elect our judges from districts. And so that has continued through the 1891 Constitution and then again in the Judicial Article of 1976. In my memory, the justices from the Second Appellate Court districts have included John Palmore, Bill Gant, Charlie Reynolds, Bill Cooper, and of course our very own John Minton. All have been outstanding lawyers and justices, and from my experience with Justice Thompson, I know he will bring more of the same. He will apply the law, he will be on the top of his game, and he will expect the same from his colleagues. His wealth of experience give him an invaluable perspective to share with us in the courtroom. So we are all exceedingly glad to welcome Justice Thompson to the Kentucky Supreme Court. Thank you. So I will now call on Justice Kelly Thompson to speak his mind.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice and fellow justices, for your comments, and thank you so much, John Minton, for coming here. You are the kindest man I've ever met. And thank you all of the people that drove all the way up from Bowling Green. Thank you for Judge Corrin, Judge Hines coming up from Bowling Green. Thank you to all of you, Senator Wilson, and Lieutenant Governor Coleman. I want to explain to you when I tell this story that we don't have patronage today like we had it when I came back into the system. I have come a full circle. When I got out of law school, I was very idealistic. I was going to take over the world. I applied to the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, but I was late getting my application in, never heard from them. So I took a job on a bulletin board with the Highway Department. And the Highway Department back in 1972 was a patronage system. Everything was decided by what party you were in and what political power you held. And it was, in effect, a crooked system. And I became very disillusioned. I tried about 50 jury trials and learned that I didn't learn anything in law school. And at the same time, I became very disillusioned because we didn't base our decisions on justice. We based it on patronage. And my secretary couldn't type. My secretary would do her eyelashes for 4 hours in the morning because she was an appointee of patronage. Well, I was getting very jaundiced when Judge Palmer called me and saved my life. He said, I know you applied last year. You want to come this year? And I said, yes. And I came up here expecting to see the same system. And lo and behold, we got back in that conference room and they were debating the law, the rule of law. And they weren't talking about parties. They weren't talking about wealth versus poverty. They were talking intellectual debate. And I absorbed everything they said. That's where I learned my law, was listening to these great men debate. The rule of law at that time became my mistress. The rule of law is common sense. We had 7 justices, all different types. Some were known as smarter than others. Scott Reed was the most intelligent. Judge Palmore was second intelligent, and he would admit that. And some of them were not known as intelligent, but they brought a practicality, a common sense, and their debate with each other would bring forth an opinion that none of them could render by themselves. It was quite an experience, and I wanted to stay. But back then, they had a firm rule. You left after a year. So my year was up, and I had to leave, and I thought, I want to come back here. I want to be on this court. So how was I going to do it? I was going to run for clerk of the Court of Appeals against Martha Lane Collins. And there were 3 other men. Governor Carroll supported a guy named Gene Klein from Eastern Kentucky. And I came in second, close, but no cigar. Then what was I going to do? I went back to Bowling Green, practiced law, and as you heard, I ran in 1983 against John Miller. Close, but no cigar. Then Judge Minton was going to run, and I thought, well, I can beat John. And I ran, and second again, close, but no cigar. So 3 years later, John, you saved my life. You came into my office without me knowing you were coming. You just walked in the door one day and walked in, and we got in my office, and you said, Kelly, I'm going to be appointed to the Supreme Court. And I think you want to run for the Court of Appeals because you almost beat me. And I thought, well, I don't want to run again. I'm giving up. But I said, okay, I'm running. And that was how I changed. And now I am here. I've come the full circle. And I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so thankful for my wife. My mother-in-law, Deborah Lawson, hand-addressed thousands of letters for my campaign. My wife organized nurses to take out my signs all over the district. The support of all of you who gave me money, gave me help. I see you, and I wish Charlie English could be here. And Mike Reynolds, your father was Charles Reynolds. I'm so happy y'all are here, and thank you so much for coming to this beautiful day for me. Thank you.
With that, we will now adjourn court, and there's a reception out in the hall.
All rise. The Supreme Court of Kentucky is now adjourned, subject to the call of the Chief Justice.
Well, Mom said